right, this is episode 90 of the Rhody Rumble podcast. Today I'm joined by Kate Rogerson. She's a URI graduate and sports anchor and reporter at ABC 11 WTVD in Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina. Kate, thanks so much for taking the time. How are you today?
I'm good at them. Good. It's so weird people when they like say my name and my title. Because I forget that like what I do, I forget that I'm on TV and I forget that like what I do has a title and a role. So
Yep.
that's why I'm like giggling and laughing awkwardly because it's so weird to me. But to answer your question, I'm very good. Thank you for having me here today.
Good, good. And obviously working in TV is something that's, not new to you. You've done it since your time in URI and obviously being on the air and holding many internships with ABC 6 and a couple of other different paths along the way. So I'm looking forward to talking to you and kind of learning a little bit more about your path. We've obviously spoken in the past before and I've gotten to know you over the last few years, but been wanting to get you onto the podcast to again learn a little bit more about your path leading up to now and what it's been like working in North Carolina.
It has been a journey. My gosh. I think the other day was my 4 year mark of being in the business professionally outside of college. It was about four
Yep.
years ago that I hopped on the plane to Eugene, Oregon, sight unseen. And when I graduated, it was 2020 to backtrack. So
Right.
no one really knew what was going on. Sports were on pause. And I was like, okay, I need a job. And I always said, I'm going to get a job in the middle of nowhere and figure it out. But did I imagine that I would move literally 3,000 miles away from home? Literally as far as I could get, other than like Hawaii or Alaska. Like I pretty much went as far as I could go. And that wasn't on purpose. But I remember looking at my dad on the plane being like, where the hell are we? Like just coming in, seeing trees and green and nothing. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Um, but getting on that plane, like I said, about 4 years ago at this time was the best thing I ever could have done. Because the world is so big and I love my hometown outside of Boston. I love URI. I love New England, but there's just so much out there to see and do and explore. And whether it was in Oregon or my time here in North Carolina, it's been so cool to just meet people, see things, explore, go to places I never knew existed. And just this business and this career has provided me so many opportunities and so many experiences that when I think about it and put on like my reflective hat, I truly am so grateful. Is every day perfect? Absolutely not. But I'm really grateful and really fortunate to have a job that I really love.
Yeah, that's great. I want to get into your background first, and obviously we'll touch on your time in Eugene, Oregon, and obviously now in North Carolina. But first, starting with your background, you mentioned you're from outside Boston, obviously Massachusetts. I'm curious where your love started for sports, the moment you realized you wanted to not only play sports, but also eventually end up working in sports.
Yeah. So I'm from Weymouth, Massachusetts, which is also the hometown of Jared Terrell, a true URI legend.
There you go.
And I just grew up loving sports. I'm the youngest of three girls, and my dad always kiddingly says I'm the son he never had. Like I just have always loved sports with a major tomboy growing up and played soccer all my life. I skied, I played basketball, did a bunch of different things. But I just always grew up watching the news and watching Sports Center, and specifically every morning, literally like every morning until like I went on to URI, I would read the sports page of the Boston Globe. My dad gets the paper still hard copy every morning, and every morning I'd come downstairs, have the sports page laid out for me. So I don't know if there was ever like a certain moment where I was like, I'm gonna work in sports, this is what I want to do. But I guess in high school when the wheels start turning of okay, I'm gonna go to college. What do I want to major in? What is there something like that's such a big question to ask anyone who's 15,
Yeah.
16, 17, 18. Like, I don't know who did this, like who came up with that, but I don't know. It's a lot. But I just knew that I loved writing, I loved reading, I loved journalism, and I truly love sports. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna go to URI and be a journalism major. And when I went into URI, I wasn't dead set on TV. I honestly wasn't really sure how to go about what I wanted to do. And I think it really clicked that I wanted to be on TV and I wanted to work in sports like 100% once I literally started interning and doing things with the cigar. Because I was finally acting like a member of the press. I was going to games, I was interviewing people. And then once I got to do the newscast and I was on camera, I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. So as a girl who grew up in New England, I always tell people like you can't not know sports or like sports. You don't have to be an expert, maybe you want to work in them. But when you grow up in the era of Tom Brady, the Celtics, Patriot, I mean, the list goes on,
Yeah.
like just you grow up in the culture. So I think watching coverage and reading about it and just being a part of so much like diehard fandom and historic moments. It's like I grew up being a part of history. So I was like, okay, how can I share those stories and tell that history and like motivate, inspire others? I mean, the whole list goes on of why we love storytelling.
Yeah.
So I feel like I've gone on 10 different rampages of this of how it all connects. But like I truly just grew up as a girl loving sports. I went to college and I was like, okay, how can I kind of work in sports and take all my interests? And from there, it just kind of hit off and I don't know. Somehow this is where I ended up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd say it worked out pretty well for you.
Yeah, I it's
Yeah.
working out right now, I guess.
Yeah.
So I'll
Yeah,
take.
for sure. For sure. So you mentioned that you didn't really know you wanted to go into TV right away until you got to college or any of that, and really take on those journalism opportunities. I know you mentioned you played soccer growing up, but in high school, were you a high school athlete? Did you play soccer at that level? And also, were you in any like journalism clubs or any activities outside of classes, newspaper, anything like that?
I played soccer all my life, literally right up until I went to college. And I flirted with the idea in my head. I'm like, oh, do I want to play collegiate soccer? Do I want to play? I would have been like a D3 superstar. I would not have played at URI or anything. But I was like, do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? So I was just like, you know what? It's time. I loved the game more than anything. I miss it. I mean, I like watch here the women's national team. Not that I ever would ever be that level, but I just like
Yeah.
it just brings back so much memories and the feeling and the love and like oh my god, like the other day when Sophia Smith scored the goal, like I'm bawling my eyes out at work. Everyone's like, are you okay? I'm like, no, go away. Look,
Yeah.
so the athlete part of it I don't think ever goes away for anyone, regardless of how high of what level you play. But I pretty much just played soccer in high school and then club different levels. And then my high school didn't have a newspaper. We didn't have journalism classes. I just had an itch, I guess is the best way to describe it. And I was always in the know and always so fascinated by it. And then when it came to choosing to go to URI, part of it was I don't know what avenue I want to take. And some of the other schools I was looking at were clear, direct pathways. Like, oh, you have to do broadcast. Oh, you have to do print. Um, where I remember touring URI and speaking with people, and they're like, yeah, you can kind of do a little bit of everything and try it all. So I was like, oh, perfect. And that's kind of just exactly what I did. I did stuff with the cigar. I went to a couple meetings with the radio and I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. I did stuff with TV. I tried PR classes. I did film classes. Like I kind of did a little bit of everything. And I think having those avenues to explore, having those avenues to try things, whether it was like a gen ed class, something for your curriculum, or just going to like a radio meeting and hearing what it's about. I think we're just so transformative and like kind of maybe helping me shape my decision, but also allowing me to explore those interests and see, I like this, I like that, or I don't like this, I don't like that. So it just, like I said, it just kind of happened.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's similar for me because I played tennis in high school. As a high school athlete, I played tennis, but I wasn't as good to go on to the tour or anything like that, or to even play collegiately or beyond. But I always loved sports similar to you, and I had this fandom, even growing up in New York, where yeah, times are tough, but it's still New York, and we have the Yankees and the Giants, the Knicks, and it's just a great time to grow up and be a sports fan. And I knew I wanted to work in sports, and I always had it like a good eye for writing, or really just like a good sense of like right. I always enjoyed writing. I was the type of kid that I would always rather write an essay than take a test. Even if it
Yep.
was a 10-question test, I'd write a 3-page essay, and
100%.
I loved writing.
100%.
So I could tell you were kind of similar in that way, but similar to you as well. We had a newspaper club, but we didn't have journalism classes, or we didn't even have like broadcasting or anything like that. TV. Obviously now, the year after I graduate from high school, we have all of that. So just always works out that way. But yeah, no, I came to URI for the same reasons because they weren't really kind of telling you from day one, like you have to go into, production or you have to go on air, or you have to go into print, like you had the opportunity to do everything. And like for me, I did a lot of WRIU and I did stuff like this. I did the Anchor Sports Network. I did a lot. But I'm curious for you. So you mentioned, why you came to URI and, coming in as a journalism major. But if I remember correctly, so I came in fall of 2019, which was your senior year, which obviously got cut short, and we're gonna get into that as well. But the sports media major actually wasn't even offered yet. I think it was offered as a minor first, but my freshman year was the first year it was offered as a major. So for you to come in with the minor, was that something that you did, being someone that was such a big sports fan, was that okay that, you weren't going to be able to necessarily major in or have that focus in sports right away? And, why did you, I guess, commit to URI, like only going into journalism, but keeping that in the back pocket? And then were you hoping to always accomplish going into sports over time, knowing that it could be a major?
Yeah. Honestly, thinking back into like when I went into URI,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm literally thinking this out loud. Like, was I 100% sold on the school? I don't know. Like, I truly
Yeah.
don't know. I think it was just like I applied to so many schools and I knew I wanted to do journalism. And then it comes down to, money. It comes down to distance from home. I mean, there's so many factors that go into it. So, like, I truly think about like moving in, like moving weekend that first semester of freshman year. And I feel like I remember walking around campus being like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Because you have like that one journalism class and you're taking
Yeah.
all your gen eds. I mean, so much of your freshman year of college is literally just about learning what it means to be in college and be on your own and take care of yourself. So there's that aspect to it. But I think class wise, I knew that I could get my feet wet right away. I knew that I could join a bunch of different clubs and extracurricular activities and try things, but I knew right away it wasn't going to be perfect. So I don't even think there was any talk of a sports media major minor when I was on campus in fall of 2016. So
Yeah.
it really evolved over my time there. And honestly, I would say trying all the different classes and different, disciplinaries and all those types of things were really, really important just to be well rounded. But most of my experience came on my own time outside of the classroom. Like I said, with the
Sure.
cigar, that was where it really started rolling.
Yep.
And then I was with ABC 6 up in Providence, did stuff in Boston with their Fox affiliate. And then my senior year, when the sports media major started, well, my junior year, they started offering like sports media classes. So myself and my crew of sports media peeps, Nikki, Stone, Cruz, Cardi, all of us were like, great, like
Hmm.
we can all take a class together about stuff that we already know and that we've already done. So I think it's fantastic that there is a sports media offering now, that there's a clear pathway, maybe to help people get their foot in the door because when I was on campus, a lot of it was about creating your own luck and making your own opportunities. Where now it kind of seems like, hey, if you take X, Y, and Z, you can now do this internship and do this class and call this game. So there's more of a platform, or there's more of, like I said, a clear, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but there's like a clear outline now where ours is kind of untraditional and you just kind of did your own thing. Um, I know now if I was going to school, like that would have been, oh my gosh, sports media directly, I can take it. Great. But did I think it made or break my experience? No, I mean, I finished with the minor and so
Right.
many classes were already there with different things in the comm and PR department. If anything, I was just super stoked my junior and senior year that I could take more, I guess, sports specific classes rather than like random gen eds. I don't want to say random gen eds, but
Yeah.
like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I could take classes that I was truly interested in versus just trying to like fill my credits.
Yeah, for sure. And when I got to URI, it's funny you mentioned some of the names that you mentioned, but really like my class, we came in and like I said, it was the first year that was being offered as a major. And like you and Nikki and Stone were kind of the names that like everybody was just talking about when certain people were like looking for advice or like how to navigate, this career path or this major because like you said, there really was no path, and this was kind of the first like trial run that they were trying it
Right.
out. Um, you specifically, I think I might have met you at a basketball game or two briefly, but I noticed like, and you talked about it, you were extremely involved in, the Harrington School itself, and then obviously go Rhody.com and ABC6 and your internship in Boston as well, just to name, a few things that you were active on in campus. And that was something even as a freshman, when obviously the end of COVID or beginning of COVID, the end of that year, that was something that like I kind of went into college thinking like, okay, I got to get really involved in
Mhm.
internships and some of these opportunities on campus. But at the same time, like it's still brand new. This pandemic was obviously, we didn't know it at the time, but it was coming. We did kind of have to still create opportunities for ourselves. And actually, this is how the podcast was born for me. But how did you, I guess, learn about these opportunities if the major wasn't offered yet? How did you know to apply to ABC6 or get involved in GoRody.com and the Harrington School? And when these positions were sort of created, how were you able to take advantage of them on campus?
I think it just goes back to like knowing people in a
Yeah.
way. Like we talk about networking and connecting, but like I guess I like to use the word relationships.
Yep.
Um, so much of sports and becoming familiar with people and learning information and developing relationships is literally just showing up. Literally just showing up. So just showing up to class, talking to people, getting to know the people around you. And while a lot of what we're talking about obviously is like sports and journalism related, so much of your network and who you know also is outside of journalism, right? So it's like I was an orientation leader, I was in Greek life, I forget, I had like a job on campus. Like there were so many avenues and places where I was that I knew a variety of people that it just helped foster connections to learn about these opportunities. Obviously, majority of them came within classes and being so close with Nikki and her forging her own path and me asking her how to do it. But just I think talking to people, telling them what you want. And that was something so great about URI. I was like, if you wanted something, you could kind of go out and set to do it. We are a smaller school. So the journalism major and sports media footprint has grown tremendously, but there was little of us with so many opportunities. So it was one of those things where it was kind of just like up to you and your own will to go chase it. Like no one's gonna hold your hand and walk you through this process. Like no one made me like go to class all day, then cover a basketball game, then go to this, then go to that. Like no one was telling me I had to work these crazy 15-hour days.
Yeah.
But like I took it upon my own will to do that. So it's one of those things where it really it's a combination of everything. I think it's like the power of relationships, the power of knowing what you want, the power of hard work more than anything, but just like the belief that you can do it and having the right people around you. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's one of
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
things where it was just like if you surround yourself with good people, like and we were all motivated and had these ideas and dreams, we're like, hey, we're gonna do this. And
For
once you have
sure.
your own little community, whether it was, like I said, in the classroom, outside of the classroom, at basketball, in my sorority house or whatever, it's just like it's all about people at the end of the day, the power of people. And I think that's like kind of what helped me in school, but what has gotten to me where I am now.
Yeah, I love that because I think part of the reason I was involved in so much, I was involved in Greek life and I obviously had internships and stuff like that as well. Is the two things that you said right there, which is one, the stuff that you did out of the classroom. I always say, for me personally, I did more work out of the classroom than in the classroom. I like to joke around with like some of my friends and say, like, I always gave myself homework. Like, I have to do a podcast, I have to go and broadcast the game, I have to prepare my notes and everything like that. Because oftentimes, like, you took some of the classes, like, there really isn't that much homework. There really isn't that much you're doing outside of the class, like outside of the classroom, unless you actually get yourself involved and meet people
Right.
and make those connections. So I love that because I definitely would not have been able to take part in all that I took part of and take everything onto my plate if I didn't make those connections and network with like everyone that I met in everything that I did. So I love that. And you mentioned one thing, which was working in ABC6 and working for the cigar. You mentioned that you didn't really know you wanted to get into anchoring and reporting until you did those opportunities. What was it about those opportunities that I guess stood out to you? And while you were interning there, it was more eye-opening that like, okay, this is the path I really want to be on. I want to work in local TV.
Yeah, so my first time, I guess, on TV or doing student media was my sophomore year. And I literally was just like,
Yep.
oh, this is fun. Like how do I learn more about this? And that's when I applied to ABC 6, and Nick and Ian gave me the opportunity. And my first day, I think was it my first day of junior year, maybe? They were like, "Hey, we're starting an internship today. Like, come on up to Gillette Stadium." I was like, "Okay, like, sure."
Yeah.
And I just show in, like some security guard lets me in to give me a pass. Next thing I know, I'm just like sitting at a press conference in the locker room holding a microphone. And I'm literally like, what the like hell is going on? I curse like a truck
Yeah.
driver. So I'm like, okay, I should be careful and not curse. But like literally, I was like, what is going on? Like I was just like starstruck, but also just like obviously acting like I've been there before. Like I was like, I don't know what's going on. Like, what am I doing? What am I doing? And that's kind of how I still feel now. I like walk around and I'm like, okay, what am I doing? But I
Yep.
think number one, that first day on the job, you take a little girl who grew up a Patriots fan, all of a sudden the Patriots locker room. I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
What is going on? Just Nick and Ian are the two best humans on this planet, and they just gave me so many opportunities and just made me feel so included, so involved, and taught me so much, and just like brought me along for the ride. And they were as real as it gets, just about what this job is, what it takes, where you have to go, and just how to become successful in it. And I think I just had so much fun that semester, obviously getting to cover and go to so many things. But I finally felt like I maybe a sense of belonging in the sense of it. Like I just felt like, okay, this is what I'm made to do. This is what I'm made to do. And granted, I wasn't doing as much on camera work with them. I was still shooting stand-ups and whatnot, but just getting to go to games and learn about the ins and outs of the business just like fueled that passion. So when I went back to school and started covering the basketball team, I was like, bet I'm chilling. Like this is like again, this is what I'm made to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it really all sparks though from covering the basketball team.
Sure.
My junior and senior year, because that was when Coach Cox had just taken over, and I pretty much was just covering every game as a team reporter, every practice, every game, and it taught me so much again, just about myself. And I think it just goes back to a sense of belonging, like and all of I guess maybe that like little kid fandom in us that at the end of the day we all love this because we're all fans. And yeah, I feel like I didn't answer your question, but
No, you did. You did. Yeah.
but it's just like I said, I just think like I was just like, oh, this is fun and I enjoy this. And then
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I interned with Ian Steele and Nick Quaid as well, at ABC 6 during it was my first semester of senior year. So I always say last year, but I have to remind myself it's been a year since I've graduated, so 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And
We're
I
old,
loved,
dude. We're getting old.
yeah, we're getting old. And I still don't know, and we still don't know what we're doing, or at least I don't. But yeah, no, I mean, I loved working with them. And whether it was covering the Patriots, I didn't grow up a Patriots fan. I actually grew up a Giants fan. But still, like working for an NFL team and being on the sideline and being in the locker room or in the press box or going to high school football. I loved interning in the fall because it was so much. It was Patriots, it was high school football, it was the end of baseball, the start of Bruins and Celtics, basketball and hockey. Like there's just so much. But for me, I think it was really the storytelling aspect and like whether it was actually standing on the field and doing a stand up or going out into the field and just shooting something and then coming back, editing it, and then sending it to the newsroom or the control room to put up on air. Like that whole process is just so cool to me. And I think like now working in production, that's kind of like a little bit where that came from. Um, so I guess just like working with Ian and Nick not only opened me up to like the on-air opportunities and like doing stand-ups and stuff like that, and like reading off a prompter, because like you said, like it's about showing up, but it also like isn't. Like I think a lot of people think being a news anchor, and obviously you know this now, is just kind of showing up and reading off a prompter. But like like you have to go into the field, get the stories, talk to people, get the interviews, edit all of that, like build these packages, and then again, storytelling, build a story from scratch, like paint a canvas from nothing, and then put it up on the air. So I think that process of like actually filming something and then it being live on TV is like so cool to me. And Ian and Nick were the best in my opinion. Like watching them at work was awesome.
Yeah, I mean that was
Yeah.
really my first like experience into it. and getting to essentially make stuff that went on TV. And I think there's something about the adrenaline that hits when you're on a deadline and running around, or
Yep.
when you get that play, or when you get the answer to the question, like just like the light bulb goes off. So like I said, that was my first true experience. I mean, that's kind of what like made this whole ball start rolling. And just from there, whether it was stuff with the basketball team, like I said, interning in Boston, working at ESPN, and then going to Oregon, now to North Carolina. Like thinking about and reflecting on it right now is just like reminding me of why. Like do I know why I'm doing this? No, it's just I just love it. It's
Yeah.
fun.
I love it.
Um, it's just something about the storytelling aspect, something about telling people stories and getting people interested and involved. Or what I take pride in is just sports connects people. It doesn't matter where you come from, what you look like, how old you are, what language you speak. You know what I mean? Like we're seeing with the
Right.
Olympics right now, like you have these people
Yeah.
who are competitors who can't even speak the same language and they're cheering each other on. It's just like sports has the ability to like connect people. And when I'm on TV, I love to just like think about, okay, like how can I inspire someone? How can I bring positivity to someone's day? Maybe not me, but with what I'm sharing.
Sure.
And I mean, it's an escape for so many people. Like they might hate their job. They're like, oh, I can go home and I can watch the Giants versus Jets game and it's going to be great. Like, you know what I
Yep.
mean? Like it's something to look forward to. So it's just, how can I like bring that joy and bring that positivity to someone's life and maybe share a story? That's what is, I think, so fun about this.
Yeah, for sure. So you graduated my freshman year, which we alluded to before was the end of well, it was the start of COVID, but really like it was a tough time. Like it
The
was the
beginning of the end.
yeah, like it was the end of the year, but it was really like the start for me. Like it was kind of just the start of college,
Right.
even though I had like been there for a full year. But it was a tough time, and obviously that year was interrupted by COVID. So when you were looking for jobs and you were in the job search process, I mean, this is already a competitive industry to begin with, and then you add COVID on top of that, which is not making it easy for anyone to land a job. What was that process like for you? Obviously graduating, because correct me if I'm wrong, you didn't really have a full graduation. And then eventually landing your first job in Eugene, Oregon. Like, what was
Yeah.
that process? What was that time like for you?
Yeah, we had the virtual graduation and like the website crashed. It wasn't great, but you know what? Everything happens for a reason. So I still
Yep.
haven't graduated, walked across the quad. We had a graduation, but I didn't go because I was working in Oregon. But when it came time to the job process, I knew that I wanted to cover a Power Five team or Power Five school of some sorts because I knew that that would have so many opportunities within it to get exposure, cover all these teams, and just would be a great starting point. So I quite literally opened up every single conference, searched where every single school was, and then was like, okay, what market is that in? What is that near? And if any of them were in a starter market per se, I would then look up their the stations. And I was like, oh, okay, this. And I probably sent emails with like my resume, my reel, and a quick blurb about me to over 100, 200 TV stations across the country. Just like,
Wow.
hey, my name's so and so. I'm looking for a job, but I just graduated. Like, if you have anything, let me know. But like, also, I'd love any advice. Thank you so much. So, yeah, that was literally the entire month of like May and June during COVID, during quarantine. I was just applying, doing things. I was finishing up my classes online. I was still shooting stuff for Go Rhody and doing stories. So, I just applied. And when the opportunity came up in Eugene, Oregon, not only was it one school, it was two, because the University of Oregon is in Eugene, and then Oregon State Corvallis is like 45 minutes north of there. So I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then um, went through the process, got the job, flew out there, and the rest is history.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy how stuff like that works because I was just talking with Cam Simone, who he's a year younger than me, but he just got his first job in Joplin, Missouri, and he graduated literally in May. So the entire summer, he's been looking for jobs, and he told me that like you just don't know when you're gonna get a call. Like I think he was saying he was at his sister's like dance recital, and he was like, I got to step out. He was getting a phone call from the station. But again, for you to have experienced that like during COVID, where it wasn't like right now, it's tough to land a job, and that's in every industry in every market, but especially with COVID and especially in sports, like I can't imagine, what that time like was for
Yeah.
you. So to land that job in Eugene must have been like, wow, like this is amazing because
Right.
there really wasn't much going on at the time. Like you said, there was
No.
quarantine. So yeah,
Yeah. And I had a couple other offers of different locations, and I was like trying to talk myself into them, but I knew what I wanted to cover wasn't there. One of them was a station somewhere in northern Wisconsin. Another one was was it Iowa, I think, but it was like part news. And so, I mean, part of this job is just betting on yourself and taking a risk. And like I said, moving 3,000 miles away from home was so bold and so terrifying, but
yeah,
I had nothing to lose and I
exactly.
would do it all over again. I would do it all over again.
Yeah. Is that like how does that like when that hits you that like you're gonna be moving because you're not moving to like Rhode Island, you're from Mass, you're not moving to Rhode Island, like you're moving like you said 3,000 miles away. Like does that like hit you and you're like when does that hit you when you're there, or, like when you accept the job that like you're moving your entire life across the
Yeah.
country?
I don't think it hit me until like my parents like left, like dropped me off at the apartment. Like they'd been out there for a week, we're getting settled, like until they left. And I was just like sitting there. I'm like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm doing this. Like I'm here. I don't know a single freaking soul. And I have an apartment and I have all this furniture and I have all these things. Like I remember just like sitting there, like looking around. That's why I keep moving, like just being like, okay, this is my life now. Like
Yeah.
it's really crazy to think about because
Yeah.
it's not normal. And it's not like, again, it's not like I was like a few hours or a quick flight. Like I was on the other side of the country.
Right.
And I just did it. I
Yeah.
just, yeah.
Yeah, so during that time, that was right around, if you correct me if I'm wrong again, you had a production assistant job in Bristol with ESPN, right? So obviously COVID had other plans. Did you finish that like that job, or what was that like time like for you working at ESPN? And then did COVID just like kind of interrupt that, or what was that like?
Yeah. So my first day there was the national championship. So it was
Hmm.
like a 12-week internship, maybe. So my first day there was a national championship. They're bringing us around. And then my first day where I was set, they're like, okay, no more training. Like you're actually going to contribute to the shows and um, do I forget what my duty was that day, but my first day of no training is the day that Kobe Bryant passed away. So my first day ever like being like a professional with duties, not with duties, but like my first day at ESPN essentially was the day Kobe Bryant passed away. So I sat there for 12 hours transcribing interviews and
Wow.
literally everyone around me and I'm surrounded by, people who've been in the business for 40 plus years and it was just chaos. And then
Yeah.
my last day there was the day that COVID essentially ended March Madness, but that was planned because
Yep.
I was supposed to head to Brooklyn to cover the A10 tournament to go to URI.
Yeah.
So when you talk about like covering history and being a part of history, like those 10 weeks from day one to whatever my last day there, um, I was a part of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So it halted my internship and after my time at ESPN because I was driving back and forth. I was living in Bristol but still living in Narragansett and I was driving back and forth to cover games and like do all that. And yeah, I just went back to school and I was like, well, this is life because all my
Yeah.
friends were on spring break
Yep.
and they're calling me. They're like, Kate, what's going on? I'm like, you guys, like, this is not good. And just like lived at my house in Narragansett for the next couple months and applied to jobs, went to the beach, made recipes, like what we all did during COVID. It was like, well, what are we gonna do? Just kind of didn't sit around, but sat around.
Yeah. No.
So yeah. And like I said, then I just shipped up to moved a few months later.
That's crazy. Yeah, no, I was on campus, so that was my second semester. It was a spring semester, when COVID hit and everything. And it's funny, I'll tell the story because it's like it really like kind of defined my freshman year. But so when Kobe died, first of all, I remember where I was when that happened. I was sitting like in Hillside in my friend's room, and then this like kid ran in with a Kobe Bryant jersey on and was like, "Did you guys hear the news?" I look down and there's all these ESPN notifications and everything, and I'm just like, "Oh my God!" Like, and then actually, if you remember, I don't know how much you were on campus that year because it was your senior year, but in Hillside they did like the post-its with like the 24 for Kobe and the 8. So I took a picture of that and I still have it in my camera roll, and I'm like, this is crazy. And then, like you said, a few weeks later. So I wasn't really doing like many broadcasts. I wasn't broadcasting as much because I was only a freshman, but I was sitting in the Rhody Ruckus, and it was the night before I left for spring break. I had a ticket to go onto the Amtrak, go back to New York, and it was the URI Dayton game, and I'm a Knicks fan, so at the time it was Obi Toppin and Jacob Toppin. So now, like for a while, I was like, oh wow, I get to see Obi Toppin. I mean, now he's with the Pacers, but like it was so cool, and obviously like we got blown out, and that was it. That was the last time I was on campus, the last game I'd be in the Ryan Center, and then
Same.
I was a sophomore, and then COVID hit, and so. But similar, like I'm from Long Island, but my dad went to URI, and obviously I go to or went to URI. At the time, I'd go to URI, and we had tickets to go to Brooklyn as well, and go to the Barclays Center and watch because we were pretty good that year. I think we were like the 3 seed, if I remember.
Yeah, we were
Um,
two, and we would have gotten an
yeah,
at-large bid to the dance that year. We
yeah.
would have gotten an at-large bid.
So I was like super hyped up because obviously I got to URI after the Hurley years, and like I was watching it in high school, and I wanted to be a part of like somewhat of that history, and I like was the only kid in my school who grew up like a Rhode Island fan, and then obviously they added the major, and I was like, okay, I'm going here. um and I was like, great, like we have a chance to go to March Madness, and like again we had tickets to the first round or the second. I think we may have had the bye, so the second round of the A10 tournament in Brooklyn, and like that, I think it was that morning they like canceled. I think it
Mhm.
was Big East first, and then the rest of them they
Yeah.
all canceled. So
Yeah, I was at ESPN, like getting ready because that was gonna be my last day anyway, like getting ready to like say my goodbyes, say my thank yous, and they're like, "Well, uh, everyone can go home because like I was literally getting ready to leave for Brooklyn
yeah,
in like 2 hours, and then it never happened.
yep,
Never happened.
crazy.
I'm still not over it, as you can tell
No,
now.
I'm not either. I'm not either. Um, yeah, no, I remember just watching like that team, especially with like Doughton and Fats and Cyril. Like they were just so fun to watch. Like we beat Alabama, we beat VCU. Like I went to all the games as a freshman, and I was so excited to see like how far we would go. But yeah, I'm not over it either. And I don't even remember if I got my money back too, because at the time, like the A10 was just
Girl.
like the A10 was just like we're dealing with a global pandemic. Like all these conferences were like we'll figure that out. So
So
I mean,
ridiculous.
it wasn't expensive. Like it's the A10 tournament, it's the Barclays Center, but like I was very upset that day. So
Me too. It's okay. It's okay.
um yeah, so you get to Oregon, you're there for 2 years. So talk to me a little bit about what that time was like. You mentioned you had the opportunity to cover Oregon and Oregon State. Um, what were some of the coolest stories or memories you had just from working at KEZI 9, KEZI, right?
Yes.
KEZI News. What was that time like, and what is like your favorite stories or memories from that time?
So when I first moved there, it was still obviously COVID. So I did a little bit of news in the beginning too, before sports came back. And I think a week into me being in Oregon, that's when the Pac-12 was like, hey, we're not having a season. And then they eventually came back and had the shortened season. But my first year there was super interesting because I go from doing everything in person and meeting SIDs and coaches and all this, and I'm doing everything virtually on Zoom. Or I'm in the stands way, way up high with the mask on. So it was super interesting trying to like find my footprint there. But also like learn how to be on TV and do everything on my own and all that. But one of my favorite things just about being in Oregon, it was kind of just like being in college athletics because not that URI wasn't great, but like in New England, college sports aren't the biggest thing going on in the area.
Sure.
But in Oregon on Saturdays, Oregon football and Oregon State football, regardless, like whatever town you're in, like that is the story. Like that's what everyone's cares about. That's what everyone's talking about. It's a community thing. So I think my favorite thing just about Oregon was the community and was the people because it's the people that make a place. So like some of the things I did that just stick out. It's like they had 6-man high school football, and I would drive an hour and a half, literally over the river and through the woods, like figuratively and literally, to this town named Elkton to watch 6-man high school football. And like they were so overjoyed when I would show up. Um, because the news was there, they were going to be on TV, and 80 people go to the high school, and this was their big day. It was just like little things like that.
Yeah.
There was the time I shared the story of an Oregon State linebacker who was quarterback, transitional linebacker, and was like, I just want to play. That's all I want. And then he went on to be known as the Jackhammer, Jack Coletto. He might be on the Steelers practice squad now, but he won, I believe it's the Paul Hornung Trophy for like the most versatile player in college athletics. Like just like little things like that. Getting to meet a family in the town of Cottage Grove whose 3 daughters all played on the same high school softball team, like a junior, a senior, and a freshman, like any parent's dream. Like again, it just goes back to the stories and being a part of those moments. But at the same time, it's like there's the bad too. Like the day Mario Cristobal left, the day that we learned the Pac-12 wasn't going to exist anymore.
Yep.
Like the ups and the downs. And I think just my favorite part is about that whole experience is the people that I met. Because work-wise, you just learn how much these teams matter to the community. And then personally, again, like I said, relationships, just getting to know people and meet people and learn their stories and just bring so much perspective. So that, like I said, I was in Oregon for 2 years, grinding away. I loved it, but I knew that that was just the start of where I wanted to be. And again, that kind of just where the light bulb went off. I was like, okay, I do like this. Okay, like I kind of know what I'm doing, or this or that. So I loved it. I loved every minute of it.
Yeah, it sounds like a great experience. And like I think that's really interesting, like talking with a lot of sports anchors and reporters who work in obviously different markets across the country. You're not always going to be able to cover the major sports team or one of the four major sports or a big time college team, but even like the small stories or the high school stories, like that's really where you get your reps and you get your experience. And like you said, it's about the people in the community, and like that's what makes your time, your experience there. So I
Yeah.
think that's really cool that you
Yeah.
were able to have some of those smaller stories. And like, okay, it may not be like the biggest market for news, but like you were able to walk away with it like so many
Yeah.
different connections and stories and memories from that time.
Right. I mean, even just like yesterday, watching the Olympics, the 1500, Cole Hawker, who won gold, he went to Oregon. I covered
Yeah,
him. Like it's just
that's
Jade
awesome.
Carey. Obviously, she won the Olympics, then went to Oregon State. But like the amount of times I've spoken with Jade Carey, an Olympic gymnast, like it's just unbelievable because it's just you don't know where these people are gonna go and what they're gonna achieve. But it's like you root for people because you want them to succeed, but it's like you root for good people. And it's like
Yeah.
I met so many fantastic people and getting to experience so much, so many big time like college football games on the sidelines of Oregon and Oregon State and traveling up and down the West Coast. And like I said, being at Allegiant Stadium for the Pac-12 championship and just being like, oh my gosh, like it's just, like I said, it's the moments and the people. And I think just like covering history, that just makes this job so unique.
Yeah, that's awesome. Were you there when like Adley Rushman was at Oregon State? And
No, that was
okay.
before, but like he's all anyone talks about. He's all
Yeah.
anyone talks about out there. But
Or that was obviously like you were there. Were you there before Bo Nix and all that too? Or
so Bo Nix got to the Ducks, transferred to Oregon,
okay.
what, like January 2022. So I was there for spring ball
Okay.
and like part of fall camp. Like I left just before his official like tenure of playing began. So like
Wow.
I covered him, but like not as deeply as like my friends who are there now.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, gotcha. I mean, that's still like really cool that you were able to have some of those stories again. Like to be able to see Olympic gold medalists now, like that you had once covered. So
Hmm.
cool. Like I'm even thinking like from a Rhode Island perspective, like Tammy Reese had just won the bronze medal. Um, like that's so cool. Obviously
Yeah.
I've been there. Like her first 4 years, her first year was my freshman year, your senior year, and watched her like my senior year, I called the game where they won the A10 regular season.
Yeah.
Like now she's a bronze medalist. Like it's so cool to kind of see some of those stories and some of those things happen.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, like thinking about it. And so my boyfriend even said it to me recently. He's like, "You've covered like some like crazy events." I'm like, "No, I
Yeah.
know." Like, you have to take a step back. Sometimes, like in moments like this, where it's like, "Oh, like what stories stand out?" Or yesterday when I'm watching again the Olympics, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like Cole Hawker's gonna win!" Like literally again, like that last
Yep.
100 meters, he crossed the line. I start crying. I'm like, "This is unbelievable." Like
Yeah,
for
that's
anyone
awesome.
watching it, it was an amazing race. If you watch the men's 1500, but just like knowing the story and interactions and everything. Like I said, it's the connections and relationships that just make all of this that much more meaningful and I mean that much more purposeful.
Yeah. So you're 2 years now, 2 years in Oregon and 2 years now in North Carolina, Raleigh, Durham area. You cover high school athletics, Duke, UNC, NC State, Carolina Hurricanes too. So you talk about like covering such cool things, such cool stories. I mean, like you have now the opportunity to cover a professional team and some of the biggest teams, especially in college basketball and college football. I guess what is your favorite part about working, in this market, working in North Carolina and working at ABC 11? Because I'm going to ask about my next question is about March Madness and that run. And um, I'm a Rangers fan, so I want to ask about the Carolina Hurricanes and everything like that. But what is the best part about working in North Carolina?
There's so much here, sports wise, that I think people don't realize.
Right.
Because Duke, UNC, and NC State are like in a triangle. This area is also known as a triangle.
Mhm.
And they're all like 20, 25 minutes apart from each other. So you have three major schools with insane rivalries and backgrounds and stories and overlaps, all not that far from each other. So it's like the fandom, like when you come here, people are like, "Oh, so who are you a fan of?" Or like, "Oh, who's your team?" Like I got an argument the other day. So I'm like, "Who's your team?" I'm like, "I don't have a team." Like, "But you have to here." I'm like, "Sir, I work for these teams. I do not have a team." Like, whatever. But it's like you people literally have a team. So because it's so college driven, what makes the Carolina Hurricanes so unique is that they are like the one pro team in this region of Central North Carolina. So like so many people come together and rally around the Hurricanes, which is kind of unique because in any city, everyone rallies around that one pro sports team. But where there's very college driven here and it's a very collegiate market, the Hurricanes are like the one thing that kind of like unite everyone. But I just think North Carolina is like a little taste of everything where it's a larger market, but it doesn't feel too big, but you still have like the community feel that I felt in Oregon here.
Yeah, for sure. So again, I alluded to it, but I want to ask about it. This past year, I mean, I'm sure you have so many stories and memories just from covering Duke, UNC, NC State, and the March Madness run. And like I said, even the Canes making a Stanley Cup playoff run. NC State specifically, like that Cinderella run, historic Cinderella run with DJ Burns and watching UNC. I'm a big fan of RJ Davis, so that was so cool to watch for me. And then, like I said, I'm a Rangers fan, so the Canes and the Rangers. That was an unbelievable series. So I freelance at MSG Networks. I work at SiriusXM, but I freelance at MSG Networks, and I was able to like log a lot of those games and like be in the studio for the pre and post game show for a lot of those games. And being down 3-0 to the Rangers and then winning two games to force game six. And then of course coming up short. Like, do you have a favorite story or memory from covering like these historic playoff runs and just March Madness in general?
Yeah. March Madness was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. One of the reasons that I love this job and why I wanted to get into it is literally because you are a basketball. Like I have always loved college basketball. And the minute I started covering it and like I got a taste of March, I was like, ooh, I want to like all I want to do is cover March Madness. So when I went to backtracking, but like when I went to Oregon, the Ducks obviously ended URI's lovely journey in 2017,
Yep.
and I still argue with everyone about that out there. But
Yeah. We should
um,
have won
but
that game, by the way. We should have
I would
we
say
could
that
have won that game.
I tell people if Hassan Martin did not get two fouls in the first minute of the game, we would have won. And they all look at me
Should
like
have.
I'm crazy. They literally look at me like crazy. I'm like, no, you guys, you don't understand. But
You're not
that's
crazy.
that's
You're not.
beside the point.
I
But
believe that too. Yeah.
when I was out in Oregon, I was like, oh my gosh, college basketball, like so excited. And I was so fortunate, obviously, that I get to cover it, but I never went to March Madness because the teams, like the year that the Beavers were the Elite Eight Cinderella team, that was in the bubble, and we didn't travel and all this. So coming to North Carolina as a girl who loves college sports and covering Duke and UNC, I was like, does it get any better than this college basketball? Absolutely
No.
not. So NC State basketball is fantastic and has so much history of Jimmy V and the cardiac pack. But obviously, Duke and UNC have taken the cake in the recent years. So fast forward to this year, the pack have such an up and down year. They have like moments where they look have it together. There's moments where you're just like, what is going on with this team? Then all of a sudden they go to DC. Their head coach Kevin Keatts, he's on the hot seat because they have not played well and his contract and all this. They're missing players. Their star player, DJ Horn, didn't play that first game versus Louisville. And then all of a sudden, they win 5 games in 5 days and are ACC champs for the first time in 37 years. And everyone is like, what the heck? And they beat North Carolina,
Yep.
which is for us here, it's like insane. Because although Duke and UNC, people talk about that fandom a lot, there's not that many Duke fans here in the Triangle area because a lot of people that go to Duke are from out of state. They're from the New York area. Like people from North Carolina go to Duke, but here the bigger rivalry of people in the community is North Carolina and North Carolina State. So the ACC tournament and the ACC championship was just like insane. And as someone who's newer here, I'm just covering like, wow, this is so great. Like one of our teams won. But my photographers who have lived here in North Carolina forever were like shocked. Like they're like, Kate, you don't realize how big of a deal this is. I'm like, no, you're right. I don't. I don't. But I'm like, we got to keep covering. Like it was just watching the emotion and experiencing the emotion of just Pac fans who literally have been suffering for 37 years and have just been like disappointed time and time again was like just I'm replaying the scenes in my head from the championship in DC and it was insane. So then from there, obviously they kept going. And then I went to Brooklyn with Duke that first weekend of the tournament.
Yeah.
Then I was in Dallas with Duke and NC State. Um, and like I said, Pac fans are just like, we're still going. Like, this is amazing. Then you get your Elite Eight on Easter Sunday. And I'm the first one to admit, I was like, you know what? Duke's really looked good. They've got their act together the last few games. Like, is the Pac's magic gonna run up? No, they freaking kill them. They kill them. And it was just, again, like, just one of those moments, the confetti's falling. I'm interviewing Kevin Keatts on the floor. Like, families are crying and just hearing the stories of kids like our age being like, I go to NC State right now, or I just graduated, and my dad was a freshman in 1981 when they went with Jimmy V, or 84, and all these years. It was just like hearing these stories of people again. Like it all goes back to like the connection of this and like what sports means to us. So it was insane. At the same time, NC State women also went to the Final Four. So I went from Cleveland. I covered the women's Final Four. Once they lost to South Carolina, all nighter, got on a plane overnight, and then next thing I know, I'm in Phoenix, like at State Farm Stadium for the men's
Wow.
Final Four. And I'm just like literally
Yeah.
staying in the pregame, and I'm like, is this real life? Like, did I just get on a plane? And am I covering both the Final Fours in the span of like less than 24 hours? It was insane. Obviously, State, it was the ultimate Cinderella story, but they were just so fun to cover. That team always has been so fun in my 2 years here. And just getting to see their hard work pay off and getting to see it all come together and just like somehow they all just figured it out and started playing. It was insane. It was insane. Like I don't know if I've still fully processed it or have like physically and mentally recovered from March being like the longest month of my life. Like the most
Yeah.
fun, but the longest month of my life.
Yeah, and on top of that, you have the Hurricanes, and like they're
Yep.
making a push into
Oh
June.
yeah. So
That's
pretty
like,
much
yeah.
Final Four,
Mhm.
like took a few days off and then it was time for Stanley Cup playoffs. And same thing, the Hurricanes this year, they had so much talent on their roster, and this is everyone knew that what was looming with the deadline and free agency and who could be coming, who could be staying. So they didn't play great versus the Isles, so they got by them, and then everyone was pumped up. So they're playing the Rangers after what was it, the 2022, 2021? I'm losing track of dates and numbers in my head, but when the Rangers beat them in seven, I think it was
I think that was 22, but I might be wrong.
No, I think it was 22. I should know this, but there's so many dates and numbers going around in my brain right now. But that was the
You
thing.
cover a lot.
And the thing is, too, same
Yeah.
thing. There are so many New Yorkers and New Jersey people here in North Carolina. So
Yeah.
people love the Rangers here. Like there's a lot of like New England people, so people love the Bruins here. But anytime that the Rangers come to PNC Arena where the Hurricanes play, um, there's always so many Rangers jerseys. So it was one of those things where everyone was pumped up for the community and the fans, but just like the history between the two organizations. So getting to go to MSG for my first time was really, really cool. Games one and
Yeah.
two, sitting on the I forget what it's called, the thing
The
above
bridge? Was it the
the
bridge?
bridge. Yeah, so
Yeah.
we're on the bridge, it's shaking during it, and just knowing the history of that venue and walking in and being in New York, that was super overwhelming and super overstimulating, but it was really, really cool to cover. And yeah, they almost did it. They almost brought it back, but they ran out of luck.
But Chris Kreider had other plans. So.
Yeah, well, listen, when your power play doesn't convert
Mm.
in the postseason at the level it should, unfortunately, things aren't going to go in your favor.
I mean, that goaltender matchup was insane though. Like,
Insane.
yeah.
Igor was insane. Insane. Like he had
Yeah.
like Bob energy from the year before. Granted, Bob was still good this year for the Panthers, but like he was like
Yeah.
channeling Bob energy. Like, and for the Hurricanes too, it was just like 2 years, back to back years. They just got such a tough draw. Like the year before in the Eastern Conference Finals, and they got swept by the Florida Panthers. I was there for those. I saw all four of those games, and it was just, yeah. I've been very fortunate to cover some really big time things,
Yeah, yeah.
things where I get so in the thick of the grind and covering these things and having to do my job that it's like I'm not fully processing what's going on sometimes because it's just one thing to another, which is great. But it's like, so in moments like this, when I'm like rehashing it, it's like, wow, I really have covered a lot. But also, what I think about is just, again, how much these teams and the results mean to people and how much they impact them. And when the Canes lost this time around versus the Rangers, I think for everyone, it was like I said, everyone knew it was the end of an era because the core group, Brady Shea's out, Brett Pesci's out, Teuvo Teravainen's out. We had Jake Gensel. Now he was here for a hot sec. He's gone. So
Yep.
a lot of change has come, and change can sometimes be a good thing. But when you get attached to these teams and you love them inside and out with every fiber of their being, I think the fans take it really hard, regardless of what sport it is, regardless.
Yeah, that's great. A couple of things from there. I just want to like that first game. So going back to March Madness for a second, that first weekend, um, so I had tickets to the morning session at the Barclays. It was crazy that day. I think so. You were there, with Nikki actually, um,
Running around
and I was
somewhere.
like, I was trying to text like I was getting in touch with Nikki. I was trying to text you, and I think Nikki at one point like during halftime. So I saw the FAU Northwestern game, which was crazy. That was the overtime game. I'm not sure if you were there for that game, but um,
I forget. It's all a blur.
yeah, it was like an 8-9 matchup. It was great. And then I was there for the UConn Stetson game, and I left at halftime because it was a 50 point or 40 point deficit or
Yeah.
whatever, and UConn just rolled through them. But I was trying to get in touch, like I was trying to meet up with you guys. Like I remember Nikki texting me that morning, and I told her I was like, I'm gonna be at the Barclays Center. Like I'm sure you're covering UConn. Like she's like, oh my God, Kate's gonna be here. Like you have to meet up with us, and I'm like, I'll try. And I was sitting up high because I got the tickets with my friend
It
like
was
that
so
morning.
chaotic. It was so
And I
chaotic.
was like, I couldn't even move. Like I even tried like during halftime to like meet up with you guys or like with Nikki or someone and I just like I couldn't even move in the because I think like you know that arena. It's like the concourse is very narrow and like you can't
I don't
really
like that arena. Hot
I'm
take.
not
I
a
don't
huge fan of
like
it
that
like either.
arena.
I mean, I'm a Knicks and Rangers fan, so but I'll support the Islanders too. Like I like even when they were playing at the Barclays Center, like I hated going there. It was so dark up high and like
Yeah.
couldn't see what you were eating. Like it was just like it wasn't great. It's meant for basketball. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, no, like it that I was there that day as well, like that first weekend of March Madness. And then I mentioned I freelanced at MSG Network, so working at MSG is like you said, it was your first time going there. Like it's I interned there actually my junior going into senior year that summer. Um and like working in their offices like right next to the stadium and now working as a freelancer like at MSG Networks is like unbelievable and seeing like talent walk by like Mike Breen just walking by. It's like and Clyde Frazier. It's like it's insane. Like it's
Right.
real. But yeah, like going back to your point of like how like Carolina fans are just so into it and like how the Rangers travel so well on the road. Like I remember I was logging a few of those games like in the studio or in like the screener room. And like we always recorded for MSG Networks like the pregame and just seeing like the Carolina fans like tailgating in the because MSG is like in the middle of New York City. It's right over Penn. There's no like tailgating. There's no parking
Mm.
lot. Like but seeing like the fans get it so into it, like we took a whole hour of like the pregame show, and we had like 30 or 40 minutes of, or like B-roll of just like the Carolina fans like playing cornhole and just like so in it and like getting fired up for the game. And this is like a fairly new team. They were the Hartford Whalers. Like it's so cool to see that. So I can't imagine like again first like the March Madness thing, but then also Carolina like being able to go there and like not only see the Rangers travel well on the road and seeing like opposing teams come in, but just seeing this the fans so into it because like you said like there's three major colleges and everybody has their team. But like the one general consensus, like the one thing is that everybody is a Canes fan.
Yeah. And a lot
Everybody.
of people don't realize that PNC Arena is literally directly across, like it's like PNC Arena, a
Mhm.
sidewalk, a street, a sidewalk, Carter Finley Stadium, where
Wow.
NC State plays. So it's like
Yeah.
they're all so intertwined. And as a girl from Boston, when I came down here and go in, I'm like, where are the bars? Where's all this? Where's all that? Like, where is
Yep.
everything nearby? And also people are tailgating. I'm like, and it's 75 degrees out. I'm like, what is going on? So yeah, the Hurricanes fans are very, very passionate, very
Yeah.
educated about their team. And I think because it's a newer team in the area, there still are a lot of people who are becoming newer hockey fans because of it. So watching the growth of a sport in a, I guess per se, untraditional market, is really cool to be a part of because back home it's just like hockey in Boston
Yeah.
is just another thing. So
Yeah.
I think that's something that's been really unique about my journey is watching being in other areas where sports are rich, or where sports still matter, but kind of just seeing how the community accepts them and adopts them versus us, where it's like it's all we know.
Yeah, that's awesome. Kate, thank you again so much for taking the time. I have one more question for you. Just for like recent grads or for people that are looking to get into this industry, whether it's TV or just working in sports media, like we were talking about earlier, it's a really tough industry to break into. And, I know that process as well, going through it and still kind of, getting my feet wet and getting my foot in the door and getting that experience. But just any advice or anything you'd like to leave the people with that might be watching this at home and want to do what you do or just work in sports.
I think if you want to work in sports, regardless if it's on TV, writing, podcasting, behind the scenes in production, or in the marketing scheme of things, whatever it may be, experience is the most important thing. And the only way you're going to know if you either want to do this business or if you want to try and stick out or be considered for one is literally experience. So whether that's making your own podcast, an internship, or just getting reps is the best way I say it. Getting reps in writing on like and all it all applies somehow interchangeably, but just experience and reps matter so much when it comes to sticking out, of course, on an application and feeling comfortable. But within that, I've said it, but it's just like relationships are the most important thing.
Sure.
How you treat people, how you work with others, like we all want to succeed. We all want to grow. We want to get that next best job, that next biggest thing. But it's like the people who make a place where you are. So I would just say, like, just focus on the relationships aspect too. Yeah. I mean, like I said, when I think about my journey, it's like part of the reason where I've gotten where I am. It's not like any of my family has ever done this or knows anything about it. It's literally just relationships, knowing people, getting that experience, getting that reps, working hard, and sometimes it just works out. Timing and luck is everything. And now I'm going on a TED talk and going on every single tangent of this all, but we've talked about it. It's just like timing
Yeah.
and luck is so much of it, but hard work, experience, and like people relationships will get you where you hopefully want to be.
Yeah, I love that. Kate, thanks so much again for taking the time. Really looking forward to keeping in touch and again following your coverage of everything you're doing. Thanks again and go Rhody.
Thank you. Go Rhody always.